I was going to say, did I miss that before?
The mute going on.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Three Guys, One Music. I am Jamie. I'm here with Mike and Grant. We are Three Guys.
Hello.
Great you checking in this week. We got a little bit of an episode. We're going to be doing a memorial episode, kind of talking about folks that have passed that we really feel like have made a big contribution to music and the industry. And this will be a little bit more serious this week. So hope you guys will tag along with this and appreciate the effort we put into it. But how are you guys doing?
Good. How are you, Jamie?
Doing well.
It was nice and warm today, so it was
it?
a pleasant surprise. Yes.
Just real briefly, it was, I think, 57 here today, so it was pretty nice. But I drove to Indianapolis a few days ago, and it was unbelievably cold. Really, really cold.
Yeah.
It's been in the 20s at night here and teens or some, so it's it's too cold for this time of year here.
Yeah, that was definitely prematurely that cold, I would say. But
yeah.
All right. Well, we're not going to talk about what we've been listening to. We're just going to kind of cut right to it and try to give a tribute to these folks that we think a lot of. So, Mike, I'm going to let you take over and kind of command this ship, so to speak. So,
yeah. So every year, you're gonna have so many people who pass away, so many people who have been influential. Some maybe not as memorable as others, but certainly, their influence is felt. So we just wanted to recognize those people who deserve your respect, who've made those contributions. Not starting in any particular order. I've got my little list here, like I always do. Top of the list was David Soul, who died earlier this year. David Soul, it's easy to make fun of actors who try to make a recording career. Of course, he's best known for his time on Starsky and Hutch, but he did have a number one single, "Don't Give Up on Us," which is a really good song. And he did have a musical career, touring with his band into the 80s. Didn't make quite the splash, but David Soul had a good run. And "Don't Give Up on Us, Baby," solid song, still a good song to listen to today. And he made an impact, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to say.
I think that song came out in 76, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
In Touch would have been in 75 for first year. So
I know a lot of musicians go to Los Angeles, especially back in the day. That was the place to go.
Yeah, that's true.
And a lot of musicians became actors just by default. Yeah. And then they were known more for their acting for years and years. And then all of a sudden they start playing music and people were like, "What are you doing?" And they were like, "I was a musician first. I just fell into acting, and it paid the bills. So I ran with it." Of course. That's what happened to Johnny Depp. He went out there to be a musician.
I would say he's probably the prime example of that.
And I don't know if that was David Soul's case or not, but it could have been,
Yeah.
I love the Salem's Lot movie from 1979.
Yeah.
I always think of that more than I do Starsky and Hutch. I really thought that was great. Role play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he was genuine. He was, he loved music.
Yeah.
Really good voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I say, he toured into the 80s. There's a concert of his on YouTube from 1981. Which you think, wow, he had enough of a career that he could tour and play a full gig. So yeah. Props to him.
I just want to say briefly, I'm just thinking about Rick Springfield, obviously somebody who adores music and is a fine guitar player, great songwriter. He's had a really lengthy career, but he was Noah Drake on General Hospital, like in 1980 maybe.
Yeah, he had several turns on it. He even went back to their.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow. How incredible is it to be able to do that?
Exactly.
Do both.
So, well, okay, I'll do that for a while. That's amazing.
Jamie, Jamie, as a guitarist, were you influenced by Dwayne Eddy?
No, but I know, but we played some Dwayne Eddy-esque stuff when we played in the band together.
Yeah. Dwayne Eddy, of course,
no,
passed this year.
Yeah, he's such an influential character. You know, I'm a huge Brian Setzer fan, and of course, I know that him and Eddie Cochran. Eddie Cochran was Brian Setzer's main idol, I'd say.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dwayne Eddy's. I think he was just a good guy, and he loved music, and he had his own spin on things. But yeah, I have total respect for what he did.
Yeah.
Cool songs and a cool tone, cool way of playing. I mean,
he stood out.
Exactly.
If you don't know Dwayne Eddy, you've heard Dwayne Eddy, or at least you've heard his influence. That twanging guitar was kind of a bridge between country and rockabilly and rock and roll at the time. He had a hit with Rebel Rouser and later on with the Peter Gunn show theme. I love Eddy. It's a lot of fun. And kind of in the same vein, when you talk about rockabilly, Larry Collins died this year. Larry Collins, part of the duo from the 50s, the Collins kids. He and his older sister. His older sister had a lovely voice and really pretty girl, but Larry was just a rascal with his little double neck guitar bouncing all over the stage. I guess that's what you did in the 50s, but an enormous talent. Surprised more people wouldn't know him, but Larry Collins was a great guitarist. When the Collins kids broke up, he co-wrote a lot of famous songs. Delta Dawn, You're the Reason God Made Oklahoma. He had some big hits.
And probably the first introduction to double necks too for a lot of people.
It was it stood out his with his name on the neck. A very flashy kid, but he had a long solid career. He and Dwayne Eddy, very influential, I think, in the late 50s.
Absolutely. You know, I think of Joe Maphis when I think of those guys, you know.
I think he's the one who was Collins' guitar teacher.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that, but that actually makes sense.
Yeah.
So someone who it hit home for me, a big one for me, was Mojo Nixon died this year. Mojo Nixon, talking about flashy
character.
Mojo Nixon was outrageous. I loved it. He was vulgar, but he was just, going against the grain of pretension. He was great. The first time I heard Mojo Nixon, I can't talk. First time I heard Mojo Nixon was on WQFS. So listening to college radio, and I heard Jesus at McDonald's at midnight, and it was just gloriously absurd and somewhat offensive and just awesome. And he made a career of being semi-offensive. Songs like Stuffin' Martha's Muffin.
Yes.
Remember that?
Very
and
semi-absurd.
Elvis is Everywhere. Great song. Debbie Gibson's Pregnant with My Two-Headed Love Child. Just the title itself. You don't even need a song to go with it.
Exactly.
But Mojo Nixon, what a character. And true to himself to the end.
He was a
a lot of fun.
Yes.
From Chapel Hill, even though he grew up in Danville, Virginia. He was from around here. Someone else. Oh, who was it? I'm gonna have to go down the list. I should have put him in some sort of order. But Dexter Romweber of the Flat Duo Jets. If you're into rockabilly,
I did not know that.
And Mojo Nixon was kind of in that same vein, that nouveau, I guess, rockabilly. But the Flat Duo Jets were great, a lot of fun. Considered a rockabilly band, kind of a punk rock band, kind of somewhere in between. But Dexter Romweber was one of the original members from Chapel Hill or Carborough,
great
somewhere around there. Yeah, he was a lot of fun. Big influence on more modern artists like Cat Power. Jack White mentioned him as an influence.
Yeah.
So we'll miss him. I
I
miss
just want
getting to see them a couple
to say
times.
briefly, I think about people, the scene, that scene never really affected me too much, but it's so funny how certain bands have a scene. And
Yeah,
North Carolina really had its share of acts that really were important, I would
Mhm.
say.
yeah,
With Atlanta, with REM and Pylon, and they had their own scene, B-52s. And then, every corner of the country has something unique, but North Carolina had more than its fair share of bands that really held their own and
yeah,
were fantastic.
Yeah, I think Ben Folds got more well known because of uh, I don't know if he was obviously not from there, but I believe most people associated him with that scene as well.
Yeah.
yeah. We've had a tremendous music scene. I mean, growing up, you think about Let's Active, the DBs,
Dylan
um,
Mike
Fence,
Dixon,
Dylan Fence,
yeah,
Fetch and Bones, I mentioned last episode.
Sex Police.
So many Sex Police. Oh man. Johnny Quest. I don't know if you remember
oh
them.
gosh,
I
I
saw
thought
them
about
in,
that in a million
I
years.
saw Johnny Quest in concert, and they were just phenomenal. It was so much fun. But yeah, there's a lot of there's a deep pool of musical talent coming out of North Carolina. All kinds of music.
Yeah, I would say between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill and Greensboro and Winston-Salem, healthy.
Yeah,
And the fact that REM used to tour Greensboro all the time, and I know that Less Active, Mitch Easter, they made the records in Winston-Salem,
yeah,
Chris Beamy, you know, and Peter Holsapple, you know. Um, there's some real artists came out of the scene, and I'm just proud to be from North Carolina, to be, you know, to just think about how wonderful we had it growing up.
yeah.
We there was some really true talent in the area. I'm really
Oh
proud of
yeah.
it.
The Swinging Lobsters. That was a very local band. Probably they were over there. Now I can't hear my microphone.
Are you back?
Okay.
Okay, you're back. Sorry, y'all. My
There we
microphone is falling.
Okay. Jamie, you want to talk about Dickie Betts? I'm not as familiar with his career, but certainly a big loss this year.
Yeah, I would say that for me, his contributions to the Allman Brothers into that era of music is enormous.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Dwayne Allman died a couple of years into the Allman Brothers' career, and Dickie Betts basically became the de facto leader of the band.
Yeah.
He steered the ship for the most part. Um, he just had such an identifiable sound, and his compositions, God, they're at least as good as what Greg Allman contributed to the band. In memory of Elizabeth Reed, Jessica, it's just
Mhm.
unbelievable how Ramblin' Man. Never one of my favorites personally, but in memory of Elizabeth Reed, it doesn't get much better than that for me.
Yeah.
Yes, I can say that I saw the Allman Brothers in Raleigh in 1995, and I was just going to go to a show, and I was going
Mhm.
there for as much for Warren Haynes as I was anything, because he had just put out the Government Mule record, I believe, or was just about to. I can't recall, but I was a huge fan of Warren Haynes at the time, and I just kind of felt like Dickie was slowing down, and I was just kind of like, I'm just going to enjoy this. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever heard a more majestic live guitar sound than Dickie Betts had that night. And this would have been in July or August of 95. He was playing a ES-335 through a Marshall, and it was stunning.
Yeah.
It just captivated my attention, and I thought, I've never heard a guitar sound that beautiful. It was
Wow.
amazing.
Wow.
And it just was so much better than what I was hearing from Warren that night, and he's
Mhm.
amazing. But this was unbelievable, and it it made a huge impression on me. And if I had never seen that, I'm sure that my opinion of him would not be maybe as high, but he was the real deal. He
Yeah.
had this just angelic sound. And I have huge, huge respect for what he contributed and what he did with the Allman Brothers and to guitar music.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that really didn't like him. He's a super musical player.
Yeah. He had that secret sauce.
He really did.
Yep, for sure.
Another tremendous guitar player that passed this year will be John Mayall.
Boy, what an
He's-
important character.
Yeah.
He had so many
Not
people in
every
his
guitar
bands
player.
that, yeah, became super famous.
Yeah. How many legends did he introduce to the music world?
I mean, he worked with Jack Bruce, John McVie, Mick Fleetwood,
Eric
and of
Clapton.
course Eric Clapton.
Clapton,
But
And
my
so many
personal favorite, Peter Green
Peter
yeah,
Green.
Peter Green.
and Mick Taylor of Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
All three went through as the lead guitar player in succession. God, I just, man, imagine that he wasn't around to introduce them. And I think even Eric Clapton said, he basically gave him his big break. Really introduced him to the world, even though Eric Clapton had been with the Yardbirds prior to that. He really wasn't Eric Clapton. He was playing,
Yeah.
he wasn't truly himself. He became himself and truly changed the world with the Beano record.
Mhm.
That still is iconic of a guitar sound. That's the first, to my knowledge, recorded example of a Les Paul through a Marshall.
Mhm.
I think
Wow,
that's
really?
the first example that I'm aware of.
Hmm.
And it's an unbelievable guitar sound. He influenced so many people, and John Mayall gave him that platform and that opportunity and just
Yeah.
be yourself and express yourself.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
He had the
Yeah, John
foresight
Mayall.
to know those players had that potential and said, "Hey, come to this band and then do your thing. And if I think you're going astray, I'll say something. If not, just go for it."
To be someone who is able to recognize the greatness in others,
Exactly. Yeah.
something to that. And he truly had this ability to say, okay, I see what you can contribute and what you're bringing. That's so cool. You don't have to inherently have the talent yourself, but you have to have the ability to
Recognize it.
right. And boy, did he have that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there
Very
was
important figure.
probably no one in those bands that was a terrible player or even a subpar player, ever. Even
They
the
all
people that
contributed.
didn't become super famous, they were still fantastic players,
Yeah. He absolutely surrounded himself with talent.
Mhm.
Yep. For sure.
Well, staying around that time frame, we lost Peter Sinfield this year, which was kind of a shock. But Peter Sinfield, of course, famous for writing lyrics for King Crimson, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. You just think of him as that progressive
Yeah.
writer, But he actually had some hit songs that you would be surprised, if you knew about his early career. He's worked with Cliff Richard, Cher, Celine Dion. He's worked with a lot of top 40 talent. So very versatile guy, but he'll be missed. He made some real contributions to those other bands, ELP and King Crimson.
I think I kind of associate him mostly with Greg Lake.
Yeah.
And his songwriting mostly. But yeah, like you said, he made his contribution for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, some major songs.
Oh yeah. Someone I will miss is it also hit me was Richard Tandy passed, keyboardist for ELO.
Yeah.
I've been a huge ELO fan since 78, 79. And Richard Tandy was he was one of the driving forces. It was Jeff Lynne's band, but Richard Tandy was there to interpret the music, and nothing flashy about what he did. he was just solid, and he really made the songs. I think Richard
Very
Tandy
first
still.
keyboardist I ever saw live.
Oh yeah,
Oh wow.
Yeah, I saw ELO my first concert in July of '78,
wow,
and
that's cool. That was my first concert,
really,
but it was 1981
okay, the
during the
time.
Time tour. Yeah, but Richard Tandy's still playing with Jeff Lynne's band just a few years ago. I'm not sure if he, when he stopped playing with them, but
I always think of a player. I always held Richard Tandy high in regard.
yeah,
When I think of like, we haven't had this episode yet of the greatest keyboardist. I would put Keith Emerson pretty high up there, but Richard Tandy was one of these super musical players,
yeah,
and didn't struggle. He I find it amusing when I hear people, even like Michael McDonald and different people, say, "Well, I'm not that great of a keyboard player." But they're just so musical.
Mhm.
yeah,
I mean, I guess we all are um, judgmental on our own ability. It's like what we hope to be able to do and what we can do. But God, I always thought Richard Tandy was just a great keyboard player.
yeah.
I never looked at him in any negative light. Just super musical.
Well, I'm
And
not a keyboardist myself, but the piano solo in the middle of Last Train to London, I don't know how technical it is, but it's just so perfect, so majestic.
I was going to say he plays the perfect thing for everything he
yeah,
plays.
yeah, he really does know what, like you said, being musical.
It's not overplaying, it's not underplaying. It's perfect. I've never
serving the
there's,
song.
there's never an ELO song where you're listening and go, that keyboard part is
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
a little out there, but no,
Yeah,
it's
perfect.
yeah,
You don't think about it. That's how perfect it is, because when it's perfect, you don't notice that it's perfect because
Yeah.
you're not thinking about it, because you're just listening and it's perfect.
it's exactly what you need. It's exactly what you expect.
Yeah, it's true.
Steve Albini died this year. How old was he when he died?
He was not that old.
61, maybe.
Yeah, he was just in the 60s. Yeah. Gone too soon, like many, but quite a character as a producer and a musician. He certainly knew what he wanted out of the music he was making.
I think I discussed this. When did he pass? Like January, February?
Oh, I think it was later than that.
Or was it? Okay.
Yeah.
I do
Later in
remember
spring.
visiting some songs. I remember, I want to say it was when I was driving to Montana back in the spring. For a couple of days. I want to say it might have been March. Maybe it was
Yeah.
March. But I was listening to some of the bands that he was in. And I never really thought about him as a band guy, but he was totally a band guy and had his own vision and really contributed some wonderful music.
Yeah.
He's clearly thought of as a producer and an engineer, or
Yes.
main contribution, but he was a fine guitar player and a big band guy. And I think that's why he was so valuable to the bands that he worked with, just like Butch Vig.
Yeah, you
those
hear it all. You can hear what you think the completed thing needs to sound like, instead of just, well, let's try this guitar sound and mix it with this bass sound and see what happens. He's already hearing it as a band. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And I liked his production because he was not trying to put a slick finish on everything and be super produced. He liked to have that rawness, try to capture that rawness, and that's very important. Obviously now everything is so overdone, it's trying to be perfect, and it doesn't sound perfect, even though they're trying to trick you, and this is what perfect is supposed to sound like. I'd rather hear something more roughshod and more, that's perfect to me as a band, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you lose that feeling when it's all perfect, those compromises, those imperfections,
when you grit everything,
make it accessible or relatable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he certainly saw to it that his music felt alive.
Yes, for sure.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, someone I really hadn't listened to a lot, but I listened to him before, and it's funny, the times I remember David Sanborn was from the David Letterman show, because he was always on David Letterman, it seemed.
Yes, always.
But phenomenal musician. Sad to see him go. After he passed, I was reading about him, and surprisingly, he had polio as a kid. He had polio and spent time in an iron lung.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then to come and
play saxophone.
and be a tremendous saxophone player.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
I think he had, I might be wrong about this. I want to say he had, due to polio, a deformed hand. His
one arm was a little bit shorter than the other.
Yeah, I remember reading Don Felder's autobiography, and I think David Sanborn played on The Long Run.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn Fry apparently was really giving him a hard time, kind of making fun of his physical situation. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was David Sanborn. And but yeah, he was a musical player.
Yeah.
And he was one of the best.
That's why everybody used him.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
If you suck, they don't use you.
Someone who is a tremendous writer, Chris Christopherson. I don't think we need to introduce him to anybody who's listening. Chris Christopherson, he started off, he went to college, he wanted to be a writer, and kind of a Renaissance man. Restarted the rugby team. Was it rugby? He restarted the team at the college he was at. He was involved in swimming and football, several sports. He was a Rhodes Scholar to Oxford and played sports there. Very intelligent man.
Yeah.
Helicopter pilot.
Yep.
all around, Renaissance man. And the songs he wrote, me and Bobby McGee.
Sunday Morning Coming Down is probably one of my top 3 of his songs he's written.
Not a good singer, but great songwriter.
He filled it in other areas.
Yeah, well, I mean, he and Bob Dylan prove you don't have to be a good singer to be an amazing artist.
That's true.
But yeah, Chris Christopherson was and even an actor. He was a pretty good actor in several big films. He had quite a career.
He did. I would say somebody who probably wasn't great at anything, but he found his way in all that stuff.
Yeah.
Really made it his own, and how can you not respect that? Just to think about all that he did in his life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really did a lot.
Yeah.
I want to try this. I want to try that. And to pull it off, that's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a
fantastic
movie. Yeah, there's a little known movie called Songwriter with he and Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
Where they put real life stuff that happened to them as they were trying to be songwriters into the movie. And, just a very cool, very good movie. If anybody has not seen that, it's very good. And it concentrates on the songwriter aspect of being a musician.
I've heard about that. I know about that movie. I haven't seen it yet.
Well worth watching.
Let me check it. I'm going to write it down right now. Songwriter. In a few days, I'm going to look at my note and go, why did I write that word? Movie. Write movie next to it. Maybe that'll remind me. I don't know. Greg Kihn. I was sad to hear Greg Kihn pass this year. The breakup song is one of those songs you first learn when you're learning guitar. And what a classic rock song. It's so simple. It's so perfect. That, and then Jeopardy came along when MTV did, and 2 of his biggest hits, and really good songwriter. Didn't quite make it past those 2 songs, but a talented artist.
I used to watch Michael Brandvold had a podcast that was a side podcast. I don't know if you guys know who he is. He's a YouTuber, and he's in the industry with the talent kind of, I don't know what the right term is, not manager, but cultivator.
Yeah.
But he had a podcast about the music business, and Greg Ken was on there for well over a year, maybe a couple of years. And then I think his health just took a turn and had to bow out. But
Yeah.
he had lots of opinions and was really well spoken and very bright guy.
Yeah.
And understood what the business is like, but when I think about his music, I can remember hearing the breakup song probably when it was brand new. I want to say that came out in 81.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like it because it was so different. But
Yeah.
eventually I learned to love it because it's catchy. It's a good song.
Yeah.
I think that whenever you're challenged with an artist or a song, that they're so different from it was also a throwback to the 60s, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
That song?
Well, the Cars kind of came with that pure pop song
The new wave
on the coattails of new wave. And I wouldn't quite call Greg Kihn new wave, but he too kind of on the coattails of that new wave movement. And it was,
forward.
yeah, it was kind of different.
God, it's just such a great chorus.
Yeah.
That I just, you can't deny it. I think for me, just as a budding guitar player, I'd only been playing a very short time, but that was such a clean guitar sound.
Yeah.
And first that was alarming to me because the more overdrive or distortion, the better for me at the time. But
yeah,
I think that whenever I just accepted that that's a great chorus, I learned to love it. And I do love that song. And Jeopardy, I think, is a fine pop song. I think that song is aged tremendously well.
Yeah, that's a good song.
Yeah.
Well, when we get together, we'll play the breakup song and we'll pour some distortion on that for you. See how it turns out.
No, I want to do it as it was originally.
Okay. Speaking of distortion, Jack Russell passed. He had some real health issues, unfortunately, but Great White was it was one of those bands in the 80s. I saw them live. They opened up for Whitesnate and put on a great show. That was before all the controversy with the nightclub accident. But yeah, Jack Russell was certainly a good singer. He really was. And, I'm not much for the hair metal, if you want to call them that, but they stood out. And I appreciated Great White for what they were. And Jack Russell was certainly a talented guy.
He had one of the finest voices in that genre, I'd say.
Yeah.
He was a talented guy. I don't think I ever saw Great White. I'm almost certain I never did, but I did discover them very early on. In 1984 with their EP. I think it was Stick It To You. I want to say was the name of it. I was at that time of my life, as we've discussed in plenty of episodes, you two are still on the search for new music. And I lost that a long time ago. And I regret it. But I can't pretend to be something I'm not. But at that stage of my life, probably from 13 to 19, I was always on the search for whatever was cool and what was new. And that was during that period of time. And I discovered them. But it wasn't something that stuck with me, but I could never deny how fine a singer he was. I think he was definitely the most talented musician in the band.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a more, for lack of a better descriptor, a singer's voice, whereas a lot of hair metal bands they were raspy, screamy type kind of stuff, and it was just you could just tell some singers, no shade to anybody, but they were just pushing it as far as they could to try to be in that genre or whatever, whereas he could sing,
Yeah.
He could have sang in any type of band probably.
I think he was an older guy, wasn't he? Wasn't he like in his?
I don't think he was super old.
No, I mean he was
60.
He was born in 1960, so he wasn't
that
much older than us.
Well, he was definitely influenced by Robert Plant in the 70s, and
Yeah.
he had probably been in a band since he was 14 and 15 years old. So that guy had toured a lot and played in plenty of bands and shows, and it showed.
Yeah.
He was a real deal.
He was a performer. He was a good performer. Really good. And like Grant said, at the time, he was one of a handful of singers in that genre who could really had an instrument to work with. You know, some I'm not going to name names. Some were just screamers and shouters, but he really had a good voice.
They had a handful of hits, and
Yeah.
they made their mark, but they weren't super prolific.
Yeah.
You have to have somebody in the band who can really write some songs.
Yeah, you have to have a writer unless you're just known to be someone who's like crooners, you're singing whatever song you get a hold of. But if you're in a rock band, you got to have some writers,
Yeah.
You have to have somebody can do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the Great White really had that. They could come up with a song every now and then.
Yeah.
Wasn't their biggest hit the Mott the Hoople song, Once Bitten, Twice Shy?
Yeah, I believe that's what they're known for.
That's the biggest hit, wasn't it?
Yes.
Fine singer, though.
Yeah. Well, someone influential through the 70s, Sergio Mendes died this year, and brought his own spin to bossa nova, which isn't really that old a musical genre if you think about it. He certainly had a style that he brought, and I did not write down his hit song from the 80s, but he branched out. He had some good songs, not just in the bossa nova vein, but Sergio Mendes was certainly an influence.
I have never really listened to a lot of him, but one of my vocal teacher in Los Angeles was a background singer for Sergio Mendes.
Oh, wow.
And she said he was a great guy to work with.
He seemed like a great guy.
Yeah, she said he was a pleasure to work with.
Yeah. Very, you can tell when someone loves what they do, and he certainly loved that bossa nova beat and the music that he played. He was certainly in love with it. So he'll be missed. I've got I've got 2 albums. I won't say I'm a big fan, but he's certainly an influence on me.
Yeah. He was a real deal.
So Tito Jackson's on my list. I'm not going to make fun. Tito Jackson's been the punching bag when Michael Jackson was at his peak, but Tito really was a talented musician. He, after the Jackson 5, he went on to become a blues guitarist and even a session player. He played on a lot of sessions. So he was a talented musician, even though he, not the most famous Jackson. And like I said, excuse me, kind of the punching bag for late night talk hosts at the time, but definitely a talented musician and deserved whatever fame he got.
Those guys were all good in their own way.
Yeah.
I mean, when you had Michael Jackson as to compare yourself to, even Jermaine, who's, I think, pretty much the next most talented in that band. I've never met Jermaine, but my guitar instructor out in Los Angeles, again, was the guitar player for Jermaine. And there's a Don Kirshner's Rock Concert clip of Bill playing rhythm guitar with Jermaine on that 76 show, So we watched it when we became aware of it. It was fun to watch, but I don't remember Bill saying anything bad about Jermaine. He was a businessman. He was trying to get ahead. But I think he was a fine bass player. But Norman's Rare Guitars, to talk about Jermaine just for a second, they had some of those basses that were the instruments that were used on the Victory Tour.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
They were out in Norm's Rare Guitars. I saw those, I don't know how many years ago whenever I was out that way. But Tito was, he was a functional guitar player, and he was good enough. I can't really say he was great or not great. I mean, he was, I think people who have to realize in order to do something in the industry, you have to be more talented than people think you are.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. There's
Probably
so many.
have some talent, because you just don't get somewhere with nothing. It just doesn't
Mhm.
happen.
I think we've all had that epiphany moment where we thought someone was just, they either became famous as a musician, either for they're maybe not the greatest singer, but they were very good looking, or they, they weren't the greatest at it. Oh, they're not, they're just playing simple stuff. They're not that good. And then eventually, as time goes by, you see with YouTube and everything, you see a clip and you're just dropping your jaw that they could actually play that well,
Mhm.
or because that's not what the music called for.
Right.
They were playing a certain style and it didn't call for all this stuff, but you didn't realize, oh, okay, they were a really serious player. I think we probably thought that about some musicians, and then found out later, wow, and so it's just like that show they used to have on, I forgot what channel it was, where it's pros versus Joes, where they took pro athletes and put them up against regular guys who thought they were good locally, yeah, but there's so much higher level between someone who's doing something professionally and someone who is just good at it.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, there are outliers, of course, where
Mhm.
you're going to have amateurs that are just as good. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying,
Right.
most of the time, even if you think someone's not that good because they're playing simply, they probably are a really great musician, and
Yeah,
you
you're
just don't
probably
see it.
wrong if you think
Yeah,
they're not very good.
yeah.
Yeah.
Then you think they are.
Mhm.
I would say
Yeah.
that almost across the board.
And to have a career and people keep, like Tito, to keep
Yeah.
people using them and keep playing on stuff and keep playing for stuff. Nobody's going to use you if you're no good.
Yeah. I mean, you can't, that's just it. You can't be a session musician
Oh, yeah.
if you can't play the part.
Exactly.
And obviously Tito was more than competent
Mhm.
Yeah.
and very good at what he did. So props to him.
Yeah.
So man, let's talk about Quincy Jones. That guy who had an amazing career. Quincy Jones did, from start to finish.
Yeah.
I mean, in making music, recording music, television show themes,
Writing songs, a pillar of not just someone in the musical community, or what, that's one of the pillars. I mean, I don't know how many are left, but he definitely did so much, like you just said, and a lot of people don't even know. They'll hear a song and they don't even know he wrote it.
Yeah.
Not just produced it, but he written so many songs.
I can't think of a more perfect career as a musician than what he had. To be a player, to be a writer, to be a producer, and basically a conductor. I mean, he could do it all.
Yeah.
The guy had unbelievable ears. I say that over and over and over. You have to have a vision,
Mhm.
and sometimes other people don't hear it. I just read something recently where Michael Jackson was battling him on the that little part at the beginning of it, "Don't stop till you get enough."
Mhm.
Uh, and Michael said he didn't like it because it was throwing him off or something, and Quincy said, "It's staying. That's the hook of the song.
Yeah.
It's over. Debate's over. That's staying." You know, and to have that fortitude to say, you're not hearing it as I hear it. You just have to trust me. That's important. And the guy he had this vision that I just totally have respect for. I mean,
Yeah.
everything he did he had the Midas touch.
Mhm.
Um, and at a very impressionable age for us. But when the dude came out, the record in 1980 had all of those hits on it. And at the time, I didn't understand. I thought, he's not singing any of these songs. Why is his name on the record?
Yeah.
I didn't understand. I didn't really appreciate it at the time, what he
Yeah.
did. He wasn't a performer or a singer. I mean, even he was a musician and certainly played in big bands in his earlier years, but that
Mhm.
wasn't really what he did. And the work that he did with Michael Jackson, of course, is legendary.
Yeah.
But he was just such an important person in pop music in the last 50 years, 60 years. I mean, he did all those movie soundtracks in the 60s and
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then Sanford and Son. you could laugh at that if you want to, but God, that was iconic.
Oh yeah,
Everybody knows
it.
that.
Same thing for In the Heat of the Night, the
Yeah.
song, you know.
Yeah.
Such a great song.
He's a legend.
One of the things I think about when I hear Quincy Jones is, like you said, his name's on the album. I knew who he was, what he did. He produced the albums,
Right.
but I never really paid attention to production until at one time I was a delivery driver and I was in our beat up old truck and a Michael Jackson song came on the radio. And, you know, in the studio, they have these giant, expensive speakers, and then they have these small speakers to make sure it sounds good on
Yeah.
a range of speakers.
Yeah.
I was in this crappy old truck and a Michael Jackson song came on from Thriller. I don't remember which one, but it just sounded amazing through this crappy little speaker. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I really took notice of that. And I thought, how did Quincy Jones make this happen? Because he knew how to make that song sound good at whatever level.
Well,
so
it
kudos to him.
also has to be said that he had one of the best engineers ever.
Yeah.
And I'm probably pronouncing his last name wrong. Bruce Sweden, one of the greatest engineers ever. He was Quincy's right-hand man.
Yeah, you have to know how to get the sound you're hearing in your head.
Yeah.
It's just like Roger Nichols with Gary Katz and Steely Dan.
Yeah.
When you know, and was it Shelly Yarmouth?
Yeah.
Jimmy Iovine on the Tom Petty records.
Mm-hmm.
Am I remembering the name right? Just no, it's Shelly Yakis. I'm sorry, Shelly Yakis.
Okay.
Yeah, just incredible ears and ability. You as a producer have to know that you have to have this. You have to have the ability to surround yourself with this great talent that can achieve what you set out. But Quincy knew what he needed, and I have nothing but respect for that guy.
Yeah.
Same.
And he surrounded himself with beautiful women.
That's an admirable feat too.
Yeah.
Someone else who is prolific, drummer Roy Haynes, tremendous talent. He looking that up, Roy Haynes is recorded from 1947 until 2011 when he couldn't anymore. So just a tremendous talent, drummer that deserves your respect and your attention. And I should have come better prepared so I could name some of the albums he's played on. But he's played with a lot of people. He's played with his own band, but just a super career, you know, and a great talent.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, what are some? I'm not as familiar with him. I'm certainly aware of him, but not being a drummer. What are some of the recordings or things that you could mention that people might be aware of? Is any like well-known song or record that you could mention?
I haven't really listened to him. I listened to him in you know, spurts. I haven't really listened to his recordings in a while. So Grant, I don't know if you have anything in mind.
I can't think of anything specific because
Excuse me.
I just pull up now with streaming. You just pull up the name and and half the time I'm not even looking at what it is, you know.
Right.
But his solo records are amazing as well. They, you know, it's 100% jazz, you know. That's what he's known for. And he certainly has his own style. Like you think of this drummer or that drummer. I think he had a more, what's the word for his style? A more forward style. Like he was not afraid to accent certain things and play in certain ways that when most drummers would lay back, but yet he wasn't overplaying either, you know, and his solos were so creative that sometimes as a drummer, you think, how did he even think of that? You know, and it could be the simplest thing. It doesn't have to be the most polyrhythmic, hard thing to play in the world. It's just sometimes not playing, you know, just like in a guitar solo, I guess sometimes what you leave out is more important sometimes than what you play. And he just had that I know every drummer is supposed to have a groove, but
That je ne sais quoi.
yeah, his playing seemed more cohesive when he plays. As you know, how some jazz drummers, especially to the uninitiated, they're like, where's the one?
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, and with his playing, he could do that, but like with Art Blakey, you knew where the one was, because that's the drummer's supposed to make the music feel good. You know, there are some jazz drummers that play and they're all over the place, and they know where the one is. And I
Right.
believe Miles Davis was the one who said, when someone complained about the drummer, he was like, "Don't blame the drummer for not knowing where the one is. You're supposed to also know where the one
Yeah.
is." And that's great if that's what you're going for. But if you're trying to groove and trying to put the grease on it, you know, you need to make it feel good as well. You know, even if it is odd time or something crazy, and Roy could make it feel good. You know,
To me, that's the best quality that any musician can have.
Yeah.
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 But he,
Well, Roy has played with Sonny Rollins, Chick Corea, Pat Metheny.
I was gonna say everybody. Basically.
He's played with so many. Art Pepper, uh, Dave Brubeck. Look at this list, man. It goes on and on and on. And I've probably heard some of this at least, but um, he's played with Ray Charles, Oliver Nelson. You know, just the longest list. Thelonious Monk, Sarah Vaughan.
I was just looking at the Thelonious Monk
Charlie
this week.
Parker, Bud Powell. Yeah, and then he's had a career with his own bands.
Mhm.
So yeah, we need to look more into that so we can talk about him more. But yeah, he was just a great musician. Certainly had his own style, like you said. He was. You would take notice of his playing.
Mhm.
So
Well, that's great that he's to be recognized and to be mentioned. It's definitely
He had a
yeah.
long life, 99 years old.
Paul Di'Anno, Iron Maiden.
Originally a singer.
Yeah, and had a long career with other bands. Played until he couldn't anymore. He was in a wheelchair later in his life because of physical problems with his legs. But certainly he'll be remembered for those first two Iron Maiden albums.
Yeah, I remember coming across the record Killers in the summer of 81. I want to say that record came out in February of 81. And I saw it at Marty's record shop, not Jerry's record shop. And I saw that and I thought, ooh, what's this? You know, I don't remember. You know, who knows how you come across stuff? Maybe somebody said I saw this and you need to look at it. I don't remember.
Maybe just the artwork. Whoa, what is
Oh,
this?
it was definitely the artwork, but it's
Yeah,
actually
definitely.
the reason why I wanted it.
Yeah.
I turned the record over and Adrian Smith was playing a Hamer Explorer. And at that age, I knew what a Hamer Explorer was. I'd only been playing guitar for a year, maybe 2 years, maybe. But I was totally a gear nut from the beginning. I knew what was what, even from a very early age. And I thought, ooh, I just love picture guitars. So I had Jerry's record shop get that record for me. I didn't buy it at Marty's. And I listened to it. I thought, what is this? Paul Di'Anno, of course, is a vocalist on that record. And it was a hard listen because it was so different than anything I had heard before.
Yep.
And just a couple of years later, Metallica comes along and they were even more groundbreaking. And I didn't really appreciate Paul Di'Anno, what he did at that time. And I think I put that record away. But then their live EP, Made in Japan, came out in September of 81. And I took another listen and appreciated it more. And then Bruce came into the band in the next spring. But I started to really appreciate what Paul Di'Anno brought to the table. And I actually love Killers very much.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
that's a fantastic record. And it's a monumental step over the debut production-wise.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure.
Martin Birch produced Killers and then the next several records, but the first record was produced by someone else, but it's much different. But Paul Di'Anno He had a very interesting style, and I really appreciate what he did. It was very punky
Mhm.
on top of the metal that Maiden were doing, and it was a great combination.
Yep.
And he made his an impact on the industry. He was great, and I love those songs that he sang with that period of the band. So I'm a fan. I have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone else who was absolutely associated with the band they were in, Frankie Beverly, died this year. He was the lead singer for Maze. And excuse me. I think I talked about this earlier when he did pass. Um, I was surprised to see on social media how many people came out and said, "Oh, Frankie Beverly's passed." How really sad, and it was sad. But I hadn't really heard Maze in a while. Listened to him way back when, and yeah, it's great to see a fan base for someone like that because Maze was a great band. Frankie Beverly was a great frontman, a great singer, very warm and approachable style. So he certainly deserves the recognition he got, and he'll be missed.
My memory of him, this would have been 81-ish. His attire was very interesting.
Mhm.
That's what I remember. It's like he was wearing like a sweatsuit and a
Mhm.
white ball cap. That was kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
yeah. That was their thing. Everybody dressed in white,
Yeah.
and I think that spilled over to the fan base. All the fans wore white to the show too. So yeah, about 80, 83, 84 is when I really started listening to him. Yeah, listened to him on and off for a while. But yeah, if you haven't listened to Maze, check them out. They're a
Yeah,
great band.
yeah, a lot of fun.
Yeah. Um, who else are we going to talk about? We got to talk about Phil Lesh from Grateful Dead, passed this year. Played music to the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
important member of that band.
Yeah.
And I would say, with the exception of Jerry Garcia, the finest musician in that band. Definitely the most educated musician for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that his compositions I like at least as much as anybody else's in the band.
Mhm.
Box of Rain is one of my absolutely favorites.
Yeah.
Unbroken Chain from Mars Hotel is one of my favorites. He had a great vocal style that was really, I don't know what the right word is, but it was very soothing.
Yeah.
Jerry's voice was always a little, I love it, but it was different. And
Yeah.
Phil had, I would say, possibly the best voice in the band. It's very
Yeah.
easy to listen to my ears, but he was just such a creative bass player. And that's what everybody associates him with. But I think of him as a songwriter and a singer as much as anything.
Yeah.
He was a very creative bass player, very unusual musician, but totally fit in with that framework.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
You
Easily.
know,
Yeah.
it's just amazing to think about. You could be a superb musician, but until you find the right situation, it might not you might not ever have your voice heard.
That's probably the number one reason that a lot of musicians, nobody knows about them because they never get into that situation.
Yeah,
That just works.
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah. Well, I'll admit to not really listening to him or the Grateful Dead, but I know about him. I've heard his style, like you said, is very unusual, and certainly I respect it. And he was a good singer. He was a good songwriter.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I only came to the Dead way later. Um, I was very aware of them through the 80s, and
We all were, obviously. Yeah.
yeah, they were, yeah, you just couldn't, not be aware of them. But I resisted it for a long time. I thought, it's not my thing.
I
Yeah.
did too. I did too.
But I would say in the mid 90s, I think the first record that I bought was Reckoning. which is
Mhm.
the acoustic record from the Waldorf Theater in San Francisco, 1980. And I still love that record a lot. It's very intimate. Clearly, it's all acoustic, but you really get to hear what those guys were capable of doing. It didn't have the power of a live record, or an electric record, but it's fantastic. You really get to hear those songs in their stripped down form.
Yeah.
And this is way before MTV Unplugged. I think that record came out in '81, but it's just a wonderful example of what that band was capable of. And I wouldn't say that Phil Lesh's voice is well heard on that record, but it's a great example of them as a band. But it's just my introduction to the band really, it captivated me, and then I started to really appreciate them on a deeper level after that period of time. But yeah, I definitely respect Phil Lesh and what his contribution was.
Yeah.
Long career. I mean, even after the dead,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Joan Osborne had some, she was singing with him, I think, regularly when it was, he had his touring band. I know that I have a recording of I Know You Rider with her singing it, which is fantastic.
Hmm.
And it's Phil Lesh's band. Is it Phil Lesh and the Dead? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I can't recall. Yeah.
It
I
was
think
really,
that's right.
really good. But there was a lot of different incarnations of
Hmm.
guys splitting off after Jerry Garcia passed. But yeah, he was a fine musician. He definitely worthy of being mentioned for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Well, someone else who deserves mention is Sissy Houston, mother of Whitney Houston. Of course, Whitney, super talented, deserves all the kudos and respect she gets, all the attention. But Sissy Houston was a great singer in her own right. Had a big hit with the song "Think It Over." A really good vocalist, and yeah, that's about all I got to say. But certainly deserves some attention, some note that she did have a musical career and was very good at what she did.
I say this ignorantly. I truly don't know, but was Sissy Houston and Dionne Warwick sisters?
I'm not sure.
Dionne Warwick is
Whitney
Houston's aunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was positive. I don't know.
I will have to look that up.
Let's look that
they're
up.
related in some way.
Yeah, I should have. I do want to find this out before we
before we go on. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll leave everybody hanging.
Yeah, that's where Whitney got that giant voice from.
Dionne Warwick is actually a cousin, not an aunt.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I wasn't sure.
Elaborate on her relationship.
Yeah. But if you haven't heard that song, Think It Over, check it out. It's a really good song. I just heard it before, and when I was looking this up, I listened to it. It's a really good song.
Yeah, she knew how to cultivate, or to try to the word's not coming to me, but get Whitney Houston, prepare her for it, and let her know, well, this is, it's tough. I mean, clearly Whitney Houston had the talent.
Oh,
yeah, right out of the gate.
But she, like many others, fell victim to all the other peripheral stuff that comes along.
Oh, yeah.
And,
yeah, the dangers are always there.
Yeah. Well,
we're running out of time, and there's plenty of people who deserve the shout outs and respect, but we're just running out of time. So
an 8-hour show.
Yeah. I want to mention Wayne Kramer, the guitarist for MC5, and Dennis Thompson, drummer for MC5. What a volatile group. What an inspirational group. Pre-punk rock, they were just off the wall, and MC5 was such an influential group. Basically broke up from police and political harassment because they were so far left, but really just a powerhouse that burned bright and burned fast.
I sure did.
And those two, both passed this year. So
Influenced so many other bands. as
yeah,
well.
influenced so many people.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah, I
so-
love Wayne Kramer's guitar style. Yeah, just really raw and to the point.
yeah,
Always enjoyed his contributions.
yeah. I break out MC5 when I can. It's not something you could listen to in a family environment. It's like, what is that noise?
Not family
But
friendly.
great stuff. A great listen from early rock and roll.
Well, thank you everyone for checking in with us, and we will see you guys next week. We really wanted to try to share our thoughts on these important figures that have passed and show our appreciation. And we will get back with you guys. Thank you all for checking in. You guys have-
Be well.